On this episode of Locked On Angels, how did the Halo hitters do under the coaching of Johnny Washington? We're going to look at the numbers and give you our evaluation today. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. John, you got to lead with the top hand. The top hand has to lead. He was swinging for those on the audio side. You got to lead with the top hand.
I'm a lefty, Mike. I'm not a righty.
Oh, yeah. Okay, never mind. You can find us anywhere you get your podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And if you'd like to get back to John and I for all this Super Halo content, here's some things that you can do. Leave us a rate and a review on Apple Podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button. And if you're not subscribed already, please subscribe and become a Locked On Everydayer. And whether you're watching or listening, come over to YouTube, leave a comment. It's one of the best ways to get in touch with us and be a part of the conversation. And this episode of Locked On Angels is brought to you by Prize Picks. Download the app today. Use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB to win $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
Thanks for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch Brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
It's our third off season here at Locked On Angels. We're talking Angels baseball Monday through Friday, every single weekday. And on today's show, how did the Halo hitters perform under the coaching of Johnny Washington compared to the likes of Marcus Thames from last year? We're going to look at the numbers. We're going to make our evaluations afterward. So let's start with those numbers, beginning with the batting average in 2024 versus 2023, Mike.
Yeah, batting average in 24. The Angels as a team hit 229, which was 28th in the league. In 2023, they hit 245, which was 18th in the league. How about OPS, Johnny? OPS, on base plus slugging. The Angels last season, 2024, they had an OPS of 671, which was 28th in the league. And then in 2023, they had an OPS of 743, which was 12th in the league. Then OPS plus, this is an average of what the Angels do well. And then if you get 100, you're about league average. So you're wanting to get above 100. That's a good score, especially for your whole team. So in 2024, the Angels had a 90 OPS plus, which was 25th in the league. And then in 2023, John, they were 101. They were 14th in the league. And then here's an interesting stat, and you have a comment about this. Home runs in 2024, the Angels hit 165. They were 22nd in the league. In 2023, the Angels hit 231 home runs. They were 26th in the league. So they improved in their overall ranking, and they hit almost 100 home runs less in 2024.
Yeah, 22nd in 2024, and they hit more last year, but they were further down the line in terms of how many were hit. So with that said, there were 400 more home runs hit in 2023 league-wide. So MLB, Rob Manfred, stop messing with baseball, please. Can we just get one consistent baseball?
Yeah.
Stop making it juice, not juice. Stop tightening the laces, all that stuff. Let's just leave the baseball alone. Let's all settle on what one baseball needs to be for Major League Baseball. You don't see 48 different kinds of basketballs in the NBA, so let's do the same thing with baseball.
Right. And I wonder what would have happened with guys like Neto and Ohapi, who had pretty decent home run numbers, even Joe Adell, if they were using 2023 baseballs and not 2024 baseballs. Like, just wild that those numbers are that way. Strikeout percentage for the Halos this last season, 2024, 23.7%, which was 19th in the league. And then in 2023, their strikeout percentage was 24.8, which was 26th in the league. They did strike out less this last season. And then the walk rate was about the same, Johnny. Last season, 2024, 8.1, which was 13th in the league. And then in 2023, it was 8.4, which was 21st in the league. So you can see how the numbers can be different each season, but the Angels had about the same walk rate and about the same strikeout rate. Overall numbers were down other than the K rate, the walk rate being about right where they were last season. But Johnny, there's one thing that we've been drilling down on, and it's the nuance of improvement and development of the young hitters, specifically Neto, Schanuel, Adell, and Moniak. So why don't you take us a bit deeper into the numbers?
Yeah, the most obvious influence of Johnny Washington on the hitting side of things is on Zack Neto, getting selective with the leg kick and using it with 2 strikes, and then actually ditching it altogether toward the end of the season.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to show you a graphic of his 2024 season with his expected batting average. So the expectation that a ball hit in play is going to land for a base hit. And a lot of times, Mike, this is everything to do with the exit velocity, the how hard it's hit, that sort of thing, the launch angle. So if it's going to fall in for a line drive, that's also a factor in expected batting average. You can see the change in Neto about May 7th. So where that first peak is on this chart, and I'm explaining it for our audio listeners, but about May 7th, you can see where the change began to be, where he began to be more selective with his leg kick, and his expected batting average pretty much stayed above league average all season. After that, you see a couple of valleys there, but remember, he started out really not doing great this season. For example, a line drive to the outfield that has an expected batting average of 700, it's usually because baseballs hit with a similar exit velocity, similar launch angle. They've also become hits about 70% of the time. So that's what you can, take into consideration here with expected batting average. So you could see that that Neto was actually hitting for a better expected batting average, above league average, at least for most of the season.
Yeah.
You see that really significant dip in the beginning of the season. You can see why he was struggling there. And then let me tell you about Nolan Schanuel and his K percentage. Mike, remember that there was a lot of talk about his power, the things that he needed to do to improve there, and even he spoke on as well. But you can see that he started out this season pretty high for him, K percentage. Now, he's not very much above league average, which is about 22.5%. But if you look beyond the beginning of the season, you can start to see that he came down to about 10% of his K percentage by early May. And then this is interesting. From June onward, Schanuel's slash line was a 265 average, a 368 on base, 381 slugging, and a 749 OPS. A big part of that was that month of July that he had, where he just went to tear. But you can see that from June onward, Schanuel started to really get in his groove and find the things that he does well. So just a couple of graphics there for Neto and Schanuel. Jo Adell is an interesting one too, right?
Yeah, Jo Adell is really interesting. Can I comment real quick on Schanuel? I just thought it was interesting on that graph you showed there that he was under league average for most of the season when it came to his K rate. In fact, you can see a couple of really, really good moments where he got to about 350 plate appearances and wasn't striking out more than 5% of the time. And then same thing at the end of the season, after he got to 600 plate appearances, was back to that K rate. And so he was really making contact. He was maybe not getting the hits that he would need to get, but he wasn't swinging and missing too often, which can happen in this Angels lineup, right? And it's one of the complaints that I think we had with Marcus Thames the year before. And we saw the Angels really not come through in those moments where they need to come through, which is one of the things I think they need to improve on in 2025. Speaking of Jo Adell, he is interesting. He did start out the early part of the season. He was really strong. Remember, we were all hyped. MVP, Jo Adell, right? And then coming late May until the end of July, he was just off his game and really swinging and missing long swings. Remember, we were talking about his short swing, and then all of a sudden it looked like he was swinging a 500-foot bat. It just seemed like this thing was so long. And then August really picked things back up again. He had a great slash line in August, 277, 327, 489 slugging percentage, and an 816 OPS. Johnny, I think that those are Jo Adell numbers that we'll probably see in his more mature years. And a part of it was because July 30th, he ditched that leg kick. He didn't have it anymore. He was doing more of the toe tap, right?
Yeah, Jeff Fletcher of the OC Register from July 31st, he said Adell and the hitting coaches, Johnny Washington and Tim Laker, started experimenting in spring training, tried it again in pregame, and Jo Adell went from taking his front foot about a foot off the ground to just, lifting the heel off the ground. Joe said, we're trying to find a way to essentially get in rhythm and simplify. I've battled with what it looks like. Obviously, my leg kick, when it's on, it's great. And when it's not, it's detrimental. So we're trying to find that middle ground. He said, we think we're kind of working with something that we like. For me, I'm not going out there and doing something I can't compete with. And we got to a point where yesterday I knew I could compete with the move that I had, talking about the toe tap. He said he's pretty convinced that he's going to abolish the leg kick and use this swing indefinitely. He said, I'm watching myself miss pitches that I shouldn't be missing. It got to the point where you draw a line in the sand and say, what's the best thing? I think this is something I can be more consistent with. So you could see some experimentation, some development between Joe Adell and the hitting coaches this year.
Let's talk about Mickey Moniak. We've been pretty clear on this show that his inconsistent playing time seemed to really mess him up. But also, John, he was told to not try to be the slugger he was in 2023. And kind of like Joe Adell, he was somebody that needed to make some adjustments. And he's strong enough to make really good contact. And truthfully, when he makes really good contact and he's not swinging for the fences, but he's got a consistent level swing, you're probably going to see a whole lot more power from Mickey Moniak, right?
Yeah. I think that they tried to apply that principle of, hey, you're strong enough. If you just make contact, you'll get a base hit, kind of like what they did with Joe Adell. But the thing is between the inconsistent playing time and trying to make him less of a slugger, I think that really messed him up, Mike. And the 1 month he had a lot of success this year, which was in August. Listen to this. He hit 359 average, 397 on base, 719 slugging, and a 1.116 OPS, so over 1,000 OPS. And during that time, listen to this, the launch angle that he hit the ball kind of that perfect line drive / home run sweet spot, which is about between 17 and 30 degrees. And then his average exit velo and hard hit percentage also were up over August. So it seems like they might have done hey, Mickey, why don't you try this? It didn't work. And then he got back to, you know what? I'm going to swing it and I'm going to hit it hard. And that's going to be my bread and butter. So I think that is also an example of just kind of saying, let's work with this guy. Let's figure some things out and find out what works best for him. And again, over his best month of the season was when he was hitting the ball, with his best average exit velo and hard hit percentage and hitting those line drives and those home runs during that month.
Yeah, and we're not going to be hard on him anymore because when we saw him, remember, he was just a young kid. So
it's just a baby. It's just a baby.
We like Mickey Moniak around here. And so but I do think that there is something to build off of at the end of last season, especially that August month, because he was somebody that seemed to be seeing the ball well. But again, I think it has to do with consistent plate appearances, Johnny, and them not giving him too much information and letting him just be naturally who he is.
Yeah, definitely. He also had a really good average against starting left-handed pitchers. It wasn't a big sample size, but he was hitting 330 something, I think, against left-handed starters this year. So give that guy a chance this year. Hey, thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Coming up, after looking at these numbers, what do they say about Johnny Washington? What do they say about last year? Did he do a better job than Marcus Thames? We're going to get into all of that coming right up.
Today's show is brought to you by Prize Picks. Speaking of numbers, Prize Picks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app. Over 5 million active members, and it's the simplest and easiest way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, Prize Picks allows you to play against you and the numbers, and that's it. All you have to do is pick more or less on 2 to 6 players' stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. And right now, you can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can download the app today, use our promo code LOCKEDONMLB, and you'll get $50 instantly when you play $5. Again, the promo code's LOCKEDONMLB. Get $50 instantly when you play $5. Don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. Prize Picks, run your game.
This is the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day and everydayers. If you're interested in helping out the show, helping out Mike and I directly, you can visit our merch store, our Super Halo Bros merch store. There's a link in the episode description. We've got all kinds of Angels-related shirts. We've got Super Halo Bros shirts as well. Those were a big hit at the Ohapi All-Star Bowl, and so we appreciate you guys repping those and hoping that you're enjoying those shirts. But you can grab yourself one by visiting the link in the episode description. Get yourself some Super Halo Bros merch. Wear it loud and wear it proud.
All right, John. So we have all the stats from the first segment, and we see what the Angels did this last season. We looked at the nuance, some of the young players, and how they've improved. And the question we're asking now is, so did Johnny Washington really help them to grow compared to what Marcus Thames did the season before? And John, I'm in the category of absolutely yes. I know that when we talk about Ron Washington's influence, when we talked about Barry Enright's influence, there were some, well, maybe this, or you got to give him more time, and there's some growth here, some growth there. I think overall, what we saw from, especially from the young players, is that Johnny Washington and Tim Laker were two guys that really impacted these players in a very positive way. The one quote that I'll share from Jeff Fletcher when he was talking about Joe Adell is when Adell said that he and hitting coaches Johnny Washington and Tim Laker, they were experimenting in spring training and then recently in the pregame workout on ditching the leg kick. And we saw that the leg kick went away with Zack Neto. We saw Nolan Schanuel make some adjustments. We saw Mickey Moniak, when he got more plate appearances, make some adjustments. We saw even other players like Taylor Ward return to similar Taylor Ward that we've seen in the past. And so I think that I'm going to say this. I think that I would give a whole lot of high fives and affirmations to Johnny Washington and the way that he really helped this team develop. Remember, he was the guy that helped Cody Bellinger figure some things out with Chicago. And then he came here. Seems like that's his gifting. That seems to be his skill, is figuring some things out. Now, the question then, Johnny, is if Johnny Washington is I'm going to help you figure some things out, what does that mean for 2025 for these players who maybe, quote unquote, have figured things out? What does it mean to help them now stay consistent? Would you be as confident as I am in Johnny's ability to figure things out, in his ability to have the players stay consistently good at the plate? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that he's shown to be somebody who can be flexible when it comes to coaching, especially with Tim Laker, the offensive coordinator. Tim Laker, by the way, we're running plays on the football field, I guess. But I think that he's shown the ability to be flexible with how these guys need to adjust throughout the season. Here's the thing about Marcus Thames and what he brought to the table last year. We complained in previous years that hitting coach Jeremy Reed seemed to not have an approach for these guys at the plate, seemed to have no direction. It was like, what's the Angels' approach at the plate? And it really just seemed like everybody was going up there doing their own thing. So when Marcus Thames came aboard, you had him be the guy who was like, hey, attack the zone. You got to attack the strike zone. If you see it in the zone, you got to go after it. And Mike, to be honest, that's probably why they hit so many home runs last year. And probably why a number of the stats are a lot higher than they are this year. But I think what you have to realize is when it comes to these young guys, they haven't figured out who they are yet. And they haven't figured out what works best for them. And so I think on a simpler level, Johnny Washington, and by extension, Tim Laker, they've had to help these guys find the best versions of themselves. A lot of that has to do with Joe Adell and Zack Neto. They got to ditch the leg kick. They got to do those sorts of things to get right instead of just kind of winging it up there. Now, does that mean that there's a one-size-fits-all approach to this Angel lineup? No, but I also don't think that that's a bad thing, because sometimes you can't be the guy who attacks the zone all the time. Sometimes you need to watch that pitch fly by you. We saw Mickey Moniak swinging at the first pitch a lot last year and this year. And when he had that great month of August, he stopped doing that. And I think that is kind of a holdover from where he has been with this team, including 2023, where it was an attack the zone approach. So he thinks it's in the zone and he goes hacking after it and he misses it. So I guess what I'm trying to say is I think Johnny Washington will help these guys remain adaptable as 2025 begins, because they're going to go through bad stretches. They're going to go through rough times. That's the nature of baseball. Pitchers make adjustments to you. You adjust back to the pitchers and vice versa. And it happens, every 2 to 3 months, right? You're constantly making adjustments. So what Johnny Washington is going to need to be able to identify is, are these guys falling into bad habits? Are they doing things that are, speeding up their bat speed or slowing down their bat speed? Are they chasing pitches out of the zone? I mean, gosh, one thing I'm encouraged by from Jeff Fletcher's article from Joe Adell, that July 31st article, is Joe Adell saying, yeah, I'm going after pitches and watching myself miss pitches that I shouldn't be missing. And that's that 500-foot swing that you referred to earlier. So I think it's encouraging to hear the players themselves recognize what's been going wrong for them, and then hearing that Johnny Washington and Tim Laker have been helping them get it right. There was a interview with Johnny Washington with Sam Blum of The Athletic before the season started, and we were a little concerned because Johnny seemed to imply that there wasn't going to be like a one-size-fits-all approach, that he was going to work with these guys individually, but he didn't say anything specific. Kind of a big contrast to Barry Enright, where Enright was like, here's what we're going to do. Yeah. I'm going to work with these guys specifically. I like what they have. Johnny was a little more vague, and that concerned us at first. But I think the point we did make after that interview was, yeah, maybe a one-size-fits-all approach doesn't work for most of these guys.
Yeah, and I think that is why we'll talk in the third segment about what needs to change, because there are some things that we could identify that the Angels still need to improve upon: runners in scoring position, moving the ball over. We'll talk about that in the next segment. But I think overall, for somebody that we didn't hear from really that often at all in the regular season, I think you could really say, man, of all the coaching staff and of all the guys they brought in, I think Johnny is probably the one that gets the highest grade, right? He's the one that gets the most points, because it seems like he has done the most work, or at least we've been able to see the improvement from these hitters over the course of 500, 600 plate appearances. And the reality is they have gotten better because they've adjusted. They've been listening. And you mentioned it on this show multiple times. There was a philosophy, and it didn't seem like there was a philosophy from years past. The philosophy would change this year. They would adjust the philosophy. Mickey Moniak being an example of that. I'm not going to always swing at that first pitch, or when it becomes a really intense moment of trying to knock a run in. There was a bit of a different approach in certain games, not in all games, but there was a bit of a different approach. And it seemed like Tim Laker and Johnny Washington were having conversations with these guys to prepare them for the opportunity that they were going to get in that inning.
Well, and you think about, let me pull up Neto's graphic here again, and just for the audio listeners, I mean, look, for the most part, he's above league average when it comes to his expected batting average, but there's some valleys, of course. Yeah. And I think that's the natural ebb and flow of a season. And I also have to think about, hitting and the adjustments these guys make is one of 1,000 parts that are happening at all times, constantly, always, right? And so you're trying to make adjustments at the plate. You're trying to deal with the particular pitcher on the mound. You're trying to deal with coming back in a game, or staying ahead in the game, or delivering with runners in scoring position, or perhaps Ron Washington wants you to put the bunt down, or the suicide squeeze. And it's just, there's many factors that factor into this. And I think that for these guys to be able to flush that all away and focus on what they need to do at the plate, that in and of itself is a very good thing. And I hope to continue to see improvements going into next year. And again, it's not as if peaks and valleys didn't happen for these guys. Right. I think this full year was a year of experimentation of, hey, let's try this. Let's see if this works. I mean, Neto's a good example of that. He went from leg kick all the time to leg kick with 2 strikes to, you know what, I'm ditching that. And by the time he ditched it, he was a much better hitter at the plate, much better player. And we saw the results of what kind of season Zack Neto could have when he makes the adjustments that are being brought to him at the plate.
Today's show is brought to you by Hims. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. Hims provides access to a range of doctor-trusted ED treatments like chewable hard mints, Viagra, Cialis, and their generics for up to 95% cheaper. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and the medical provider will determine the right treatment option for you. And if prescribed, your medication ships to you directly in discreet packaging, all for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything from treatments to ongoing care. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, Hims can help you find the ED option that works for you. You can start free online with a visit today at hims.com/lockedon. That's HIMS.com/lockedon Locked On for your personalized ED treatment options. Again, hims.com/locked on. Products are mentioned are chewable compound products, which are not approved by or verified by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with healthcare providers who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions do apply. See their website for details and important safety information.
All right, so we've covered the numbers from this year and last year. We've kind of made some assessments for whether Johnny Washington and Tim Laker can take credit for some of the improvements that happened this year, especially among the young guys. So what needs to change in 2025, Mike? What improvements do we need to see from this team going into a season where they have had a full season of experience, a full season of work with Johnny Washington, and, they've obviously learned some things along the way about themselves and about working together and what works best at the plate for them. So what are some things that we need to see in terms of improvements for 2025?
I mentioned it earlier. I'm going to say it again, and everybody's going to acknowledge this as a reality. The Angels have just struggled with runners in scoring position. And I think the solution is that, they can talk about relaxing and not gripping the bat so hard and not freaking out and all of those things. I do think their experience from this last year will be beneficial for the emotional side of things. But truthfully, John, the Angels need intentional contact. They need to be able to move the runners over and make it so simple to knock in that runner, even if with a runner at third, they're grounding out to first base with less than 2 outs, and that runner comes in and scores. I remember watching the Angels play the Kansas City Royals this season, and the Royals with runners in scoring position were phenomenal. And even Hunter Renfroe was phenomenal with runners in scoring position. Wasn't for us, but was for them. And it's contagious. And a part of it was, I can think back to 2 distinct moments in a series against the Royals where runner at first, and they end up stealing second or bunting him over. Then another single scores that runner, or they moved him over to third. And then there was a sac fly, or there was a ground out, or there was a single to center field. And that's why they were winning, because they were getting runners over and getting them in. They weren't leaving them on base. The Angels' Achilles heel was LOB, left on base, right? That was constantly the issue for them. And if you look at the box scores from this last season, it would regularly say 13 left on base, 15 left on base, 20 left on base, especially when they played these extra inning games. How many extra inning games did they play with that runner at second base and nobody out, and they couldn't even move him over? And that's what needs to change. And I think that has to be something that they prioritize this offseason and have a game plan for next season, because there was a lot of hero ball, if you know what I mean, when they were trying to knock in those runners. You saw the guys trying to swing for the fences, when in reality, a little bloop is going to do just as much as a blast would do. And so move that runner over, move the lineup over, and turn the lineup over. That's why the previous Angels, the early 2000s Angels, were so successful, because they were constantly moving the lineup over. You get a single, and then you steal a bag. Then there's another single, and they scored a run, and then they hit a double. And before you know it, you're down 2-0 to the Angels, because they were constantly making contact. And that's, I think, the thing that they really need to prioritize in 2025.
Yeah, I think I said it a million times this season. Read the room, guys. Read the room, Angels. And that goes for, somebody like Ron Washington too. I mean, we keep talking about that Luis Guillorme squeeze bunt play, and it was like, well, he shouldn't have even been in that situation because the pitcher wasn't even hitting the zone. So read the room, Ron Washington. And I think the same can be said for the Halo hitters as well. You have to read the situation. You can't go up there expecting to do the same thing every single time, or even what you're good at sometimes. Like maybe you do hit the ball really hard and you get a nice line drive, and that's your bread and butter. Or maybe you're Nolan Schanuel and you can dink one in between second base and center field. But sometimes you just need to get a sacrifice. Sometimes you just need to sacrifice fly and get that runner in from third and make that happen as well. We have some good friends who grew up playing, they were in Little League and then high school ball, and their dad, who used to coach for them, would go, take a look. Take a look. We'd get out there and step into the box, take a look and see where they're playing you, see where they're positioned, see where you can take advantage of the defense. And sometimes I just think that like little fundamental thing goes missing sometimes when it comes to the Angels, especially with young guys. It seems like this is stuff that they should have been doing since Little League, but
Yeah.
maybe you just need to be reminded to get up there, take a look, read the room, see what situation is playing out before you and what you need to do to be productive in that situation. Mike, we talked a lot about a power hitter possibly in this lineup, like a threat in addition to Mike Trout. But if Trout's healthy, and then you have guys like Neto and Ohapi hitting 20 home runs, Joe Adell hitting 20 home runs, Taylor Ward hitting 20 plus home runs, do you think they need somebody like that in addition to Trout next season?
Yes. And the reason why is because it's always been, if Mike Trout's healthy, we don't need that. But you just never know, right? And we're going to count on that he's going to be healthy this season. We're going to count on that again, right? But I think you got to add another piece. We've talked about Anthony Santander. We've talked about some other pieces. Obviously, in our GM episodes, we'll go into a deep dive in that. Will the Angels do it? Again, we'll talk about that. But I think that they have to do something to get another strong power bat in this lineup. And it's because you just don't know what you're going to get from Mike Trout. And at this point, I think you know what you're going to get from Anthony Rendon, and it's not much. And so that's where I think you have to make those determinations in the offseason and go and get somebody, because they need a bit more power in this lineup, and they can't cross their fingers hoping that Trout's going to stay healthy. They have to be confident that they got somebody that is going to come in and knock 25 home runs, 30 home runs, and be a power threat to stretch this lineup out.
I know what I'm going to get from Rendon. I'm going to get a venti iced coffee with oat milk, light ice, 2 pumps sugar-free vanilla, because he's going to be the guy on the bench to go get coffee for everybody this season. So I know what we're going to get from Rendon. That's easy.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Now for your second listen, you can enjoy Locked On MLB. You can listen to our friend Sully get you through playoffs, the Fall Classic. He's going to talk about Mets Dodgers, and he's going to talk about the American League series that really doesn't seem competitive at all with the Yankees and the Guardians. We'll see what happens, right? But he'll get you through the playoffs to the World Series and help you through the offseason for all of baseball. You can listen to his show on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts, and he's a part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.
Hey, be sure you give us a follow at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. Whether you're watching or listening, come on over to YouTube, find today's episode, get in the comment section, hit that like button and that subscribe button on your way down there, because it really helps out our channel. And we're on our way to 8,000 subscribers, and we love reading your comments, and we do our best to respond to each one. You're going to want to do that because, Mike, what do we have on deck for tomorrow's show?
Fan Mail Friday. It's back,
Hey!
and we would love to hear from you. What are your thoughts on the coaches?
It's been a while.
What are your thoughts on Wash and the other Wash and Barry Enright? We'd love to hear your thoughts, your grades, and your critiques, and what they need to do in 2025. Send all of that to us. You can direct message us. You can comment below on YouTube. However you can reach us. It's Fan Mail Friday. We want to hear from you tomorrow on Locked On Angels.
All right. We are looking forward to your questions, your comments, and you can send those to us on social media or leave them in the YouTube comments as well. All right, friends, until tomorrow's show, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you back here on Friday.
Core memory. Hey, take a look.
Take a look.
Take a look.
Ah, you're right,
Thanks, Bill.